Dan, sure.
So, you know, two hyenas, a solitary hyena forages really well alone. You would think that when one hyena joins another, they could sort of suck it in and not growl and make noises. And
You would think.
Everyone else. Why don't they?
Well, this is speculation, but what my guess is that hyenas are able to consume meat so fast that they're actually more involved in fending off these competitors and immediately getting in. So when they start devouring a carcass, they go for some areas that are most nutritional. And so there's priority of access that can be determined quickly based on rank relationships that exist, but they need to duke it out just temporarily. And so I think that it's really this competitive nature to just get in there, consume this as fast as possible, eat it up before others come in, even if others will show up. Dominance relationships are stable. So if you're competing with someone that's there versus someone that's showing up, you're still probably more likely to get more food if you can just consume this really quickly. Let's see, I think we had a question here first.
Yes, actually I had two kinds of questions, probably not wanting to, other than just mention that of all the predators that I have seen in presentations like this, which from my point of view is excellent.
Thank you.
And from one trip to Kenya, one of the things I noticed about hyenas, and this of course is an interspecies reaction, is how repulsive they look.
No, excuse me, I just have to interrupt because I have a microphone. Oh, no, really? Go ahead. And they don't smell either, unless they, well, they can, but.
You know, compared to the big cats, you know, lions, leopards, and other of the competitors, of the predators of that sort, even a lot of snakes look prettier than hyenas. So I don't particularly want to steer the discussion this direction because I have.
Okay, well that's good. No.
Well, because you know, obviously you give them names. If you give them names, in a certain sense, you are moving against what I would consider to be a more natural human reaction of repulsion. But anyway, let me get to the other, and that is this fascinating phenomenon about the erectile clitoris. Now, you use the word penis. As far as
Pseudo penis. It's yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no internally the hyenas are completely like any other mammal. Externally, they have this pseudo penis or fully erectile clitoris that they can copulate, give birth, and all these things through.
Yes, but what I was going to ask you is, have you or anybody else studied the adaptive value of an erectile clitoris of such a length?
Yeah, so it's one of the big mysteries that are out there in terms of hyena biology. It's not exactly clear why they have this extreme genitalia. We can start to understand the proximate mechanisms that are regulating the development of this weird genitalia, but what its ultimate function is somewhat unknown. There's one student in the Whole Camp lab, Leslie Kieran, that is looking at the potential for sperm competition. And it might be that females have complete choice over mates. So there's no forced mating. Unlike in the baboons we heard about last week, it's completely different for hyenas, and this unique genitalia permits females to make choices in that way, but it might also, through the length that you were talking about in these blind alleys and dead ends, through sperm competition, may also favor post-copulatory mate choice. So we're currently working on that. It's a great question. Let's see.
I think we have a question from the Cal.
Oh, okay.
So one of the students there wants to know if hyenas distinguish between maternal and paternal kin.
Yes. Great question. So the question is whether hyenas are able to make decisions based on, I'm assuming, coalition formation based on maternal and paternal kin relationships, and in fact they do. And in each of the modeling exercises that I showed here, I put in either maternal relatedness alone or genetic relatedness, and genetic relatedness was more important in structuring patterns of coalitions and also these greetings. However, as is true for most Acropithecine primates, maternal kin have stronger alliances with each other in patterns of association and patterns of cooperation than do paternal kin. So hyenas will be more likely to cooperate with paternal kin over non-kin, but they still have this preference for maternal kin. Yeah, Joan?
So I have a question about these greetings. So in the greetings, there's two parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if there were unsuccessful greetings where one wants to sniff the other one and the other one doesn't cooperate. Does this happen?
Yes. So the way that we characterize it is the symmetry of the greeting.
Right.
So there are different parts of the greeting. You can break that down, and I've looked at the different parts. And so part of it is just walking up, approaching, and initiating a greeting. So there's directionality there based on who's initiating. Then there's also if the other hyena will reciprocate and lift its leg in exchange. And close associates are most likely to have reciprocal greetings. Kinship actually is less important in structuring the symmetry of these greetings than is association. So hyenas that associate most often have most symmetric greetings. There's also variation in the amount of time when two hyenas come together. So these greetings are typically about 20 seconds. When hyenas have previously had a fight, I showed that hyenas will have longer greetings than when they haven't fought and they're just greeting under these happy circumstances, so to speak, where there's no fight had preliminarily occurred. So there's variation there as well. And I saw that leading into another question, or maybe
I wondered if does the symmetry of greetings influence the likelihood of subsequent cooperation?
Next paper. I don't know. That's great. Yeah, it might. Because it might actually signal things like how much investment they're going to have in this, and the timing might also be important. So that's interesting. Don't know.
So
Yeah.
following up on the greeting.
Sure.
In a situation where it is expected that an incoming animal would greet a particular animal that's there, are there any consequences of not greeting?
Not greeting.
Not following the social convention?
Yeah, I don't know. Haven't systematically seen any. We looked at fighting. We looked at things that might go in that direction if there were consequences. None come to mind, but maybe we can talk after and maybe think of some that potentially might be there. Haven't identified any so far. So, question?
Why do you think that they are in fact cooperatively hunting if you don't think they're getting the returns back from doing so?
Where are they cooperating?
In hunting.
In hunting. Okay, right. So that's interesting actually, because so hyenas will hunt about 75% of their hunts are by themselves, and then they have these other ones where they're hunting with other group members. The majority of those, and the only species that they hunt with other group members more often than by themselves, is hunting a zebra. So there are some animals that actually it really might pay in some sort. You can actually have access to that game unless you work in a team. So it might be that selection under those circumstances, the ability to sometimes cooperate has retained this cooperative hunting. But actually, so that might be, so that's sort of the beneficial side. Maybe there are getting some benefits. On average, no, but maybe in some larger game they are benefiting. But what I actually think is probably going on, and there's some good data to suggest this might be the case, is that low-ranking animals hunt significantly at higher hourly rates than high-ranking ones. So low-ranking ones are actively going ahead and they're initiating this hunt. They've almost got it down to the ground. They're not stalking like a lion, but instead they're coursers. They run these prey down to the ground over long distances. Low-ranking ones going at it. A high-ranking one might just come in. It looks like cooperation. They are more successful in acquiring that food, but once it's down, the high-ranking one is the one usurping it. So no wonder there are these competitive interactions once the food is down. So that's what I really think. We label it as cooperation, and there is a little bit of a benefit, but I think it's really quite costly, especially for low-ranking animals. Let's see, I'm trying to think of the order. Yes, you're next.
Yeah, I want thinking about this complex fission-fusion sociality, and there's these risks of violent attacks from neighboring communities. So I wonder if based on what you've learned about this system, if you care to comment on the Dunbar and Henze and Barrett's idea that in primates, fission-fusion sociality has selected for complex cognition, the ability to maintain internal representations of the whole social landscape and update these on the fly. So would you say then, you don't really need to be that brainy to keep this kind of a system going, or are the hyenas brainier than we might think?
Yeah, so I tend to think that because hyenas have these really established social hierarchies, and they recognize maternal and paternal kin. They have these different relationships that they use to structure their cooperative behavior. But they also live in these societies where they're spending a lot of time away from each other, that when they come back together, and maybe these greetings are really important in updating those relationships, I actually think that probably is cognitively demanding, because the composition of the audience is always changing, the who's actually there in front of you is always changing, and so making decisions about who to spend time with and when to leave, when to come in, how to negotiate relationships once you're in the same group. Yeah, I tend to think that could be challenging to the hyenas. I'd love to hear other thoughts on how you might think that might be challenging, but it seems like it probably, to a certain extent, if you're spending a third of your time away from group members, that having to update this could be challenging cognitively.
How do they compare to other social carnivores in cephalization?
So we actually, there are some other group members from the Whole Camp Lab that are doing a comparative look at the different brain sizes, and the paper is still in prep and is probably in my email box I just requested, but it looks like they are actually pretty brainy. And the details of how that works out is, I can't speak to the exact encephalization areas and things like that. There are some surprising parts of it as well, but it does seem like one of the things our lab's been thinking about is how maybe there's that brain evolution has been favored by social complexity, and so hyenas seem to be quite good in the social domain. So they are really good there, but actually in other domains they're maybe not quite as good as you might expect. And we've been doing some comparative work looking across the order of carnivores and looking at things like bears that are really solitary but also very, very smart. So this is actually throwing a wrench in the social complexity idea. So jury's still a little bit out on this one. But it's really quite interesting, actually, I think. Yeah. Let's see, I think way in the back first, and then we'll move back around. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you assessed the influence of lions on a number of these factors. Did lion density change, and see how that was affecting how the hyenas were?
Yes, so absolutely. I think the main one that I was expecting that if lions were driving gregariousness across these different periods of the year, that hyenas might actually be more gregarious because there are more lions, and they need to, so you need about 4 hyenas, as I showed you in that picture, to keep a lion from coming off of prey. So maybe hyenas are adjusting their social networks or their gregariousness based on lion density, and we didn't actually see this, nor are they changing their hunting group size based on lion density. It seems that hyenas are actually coming together under these immediate circumstances. So if a lion is showing up at a kill that hyenas are foraging on, then hyenas might solicit more allies to that kill. So over the short term, we see variation in subgroups where hyenas will form subgroups ranging up to 45 hyenas that will all come together, and in this situation, they need each other to defend against lions. But it's not these long-term scale situations that I showed in the social networks. That doesn't seem to be.
How much variation in lion density was there? Was there really, I mean, I think there was significant variation that you should have seen these effects.
Yeah, you know, I actually went out to, I shouldn't say that, but I went out to study the lions when I first went out to Kenya, and then they were just so incredibly boring and we actually didn't see very many. So in that year, the year before, we'd seen a lot of lions, but the lions were just sleeping all the time, the ones that we did see. So there is variation in the density of the lions. That has not been the primary focus of the research across all of these years, so it's possible that we don't have exact numbers, and that still might be another variable, but it doesn't seem to be as important, or it's at least secondary to this amount of food that's coming in over these long time scales. So, yeah.
So you showed that there were audience effects from the aggressor's point of view. Are there also audience effects from the recipient's point of view, the recipients of aggression?
Insofar as, do they change the amount that they recruit allies or sort of support and things like that, or?
This is a realistic scenario, but let's say you have a subordinate who's attacked in the presence of other hyenas of different ranks. Are they more or less likely to retaliate or to fight in those circumstances, or do subordinates always give in?
So. For the most part, subordinates give in. These dominance hierarchies are extremely rigid. There are circumstances where they will have overthrows, and these overthrows can actually lead to long-term changes in the dominance hierarchy. So like in baboons, you can have these big overthrows with long-lasting effects. So that does happen, but they're really rare. So we weren't able to, and I don't think we would really have the data to be able to see if the tendency to retaliate, we might have, we can try. That'd be interesting. Because they do in some circumstances, there's some variation there. If that circumstance of having maybe some of their kin in the group, I'd like to know how kinship also, the audience effect of maybe kin influences these patterns. Don't know, but it'd be really interesting to find out. So, yeah.
So you mentioned the clan wars, and your model had intergroup conflict in it in terms of breeding. I'm curious whether the clan wars happen often enough that you can get a good sense for the impact that they have. And if they do you see, for example, reduced aggression at feeds in situations that is within the clan, situations when there's a threatening clan on the horizon?
Yeah, actually, so the first question is, how often do clan wars happen? Not very often. But when they do happen, it's somewhat similar to these overthrow events. They're very, very important and have long-lasting effects on territory sizes. So I do think that being able to have these hyenas living in these dispersed groups are coming in really very quickly updating these tendencies to say, okay, we're all in this together and we're going to fight this clan war. And adult females are usually at the lead of these things. I do think that that is really potentially very important, although it doesn't happen all that often. And then your second question is whether there's reduced infighting when, so basically,
I mean, you mentioned aggression at feeds as being the most visible, right?
Yes.
They're getting along better when the enemy's on the horizon.
So I actually have this video that I use with middle school children. It's great. And we show, it basically starts off with hyenas at a kill scene, and it's just the hyenas that are there, and we're debunking the myths from the Lion King, and hyenas are feeding on this kill, and then a lion shows up, and at the beginning of the video, the hyenas are fighting with each other. So, of course it's a lion, but the same situation I think would probably apply for a clan war. And as the lion shows up, hyenas start cooperating. So they're actually, instead of fighting with each other, they're now directing their attentions towards the lions and are more likely to attack the lion than each other, and they're much more tolerant of each other. So, so I do think that that is happening, where hyenas are switching gears, sort of infighting versus outfighting, and definitely there are different levels here. As the risk of fighting with members of a neighboring clan is present, hyenas will be less likely to fight with each other. I don't have data on that yet, but that's what I bet is going on. Yeah. Let's see, I think we over here.
You did mention the maternal investment. That's a potential ground for population. Is there any?
Yeah, so maternal investment in terms of nutrition or? Okay, so yes, there's actually a very long period of maternal investment, and hyenas are quite different from most social carnivores in that their period of lactation is much longer, and we actually think that one of the reasons for female dominance might be that because there's this long period of lactation, that females might need to come in and basically intervene in coalitions to support their kids for longer durations, because their kids actually have this huge, have you seen a hyena skull where they have this big sagittal crest, and it's this large feeding apparatus, and there's a long duration across development where it's maturing way past lactation. Lactation is usually around 2 years of age, but beyond that, this feeding apparatus is continuing to develop. So females are maternally investing through this, through long lactation periods, but then beyond that, they're forming coalitions to support even adult kin as they're continuing to develop this bone-crushing skull. So yes, maternal investment is really important. There's actually no cooperative care in these animals. So if someone's mom will die, we've seen offspring just starve to death. So there's no allo nursing or things like that that you might see in lions. It's really, moms are really quite important here. And also protecting against infanticide and things of that nature as well. So there's both nutritional investment and also behavioral investment that we see. And then of course maternal rank inheritance as well, which I alluded to a little bit. It's important. Let's see, I think over in the back.
Yeah, I just want to know, do the males ever get involved in forming coalitions? And if they don't, how do they ever get anything to eat?
Yeah, that's a great question. 2 parts. One is that we are currently, the woman, Leslie Kieran, that's studying sperm competition, we're also using these social network tools and the data on coalition formation to look at immigrant males and to see under what circumstances immigrant males form these coalitions, and if it's important at food resources, if it's important in courting females. So this is the one circumstance where we see males actually attack females, where they'll form these, we call them, it's sort of a baiting situation where multiple immigrant males will chase up against a female, oh no, and then they go back and then they'll chase up again. And this process then leads to mating. So in that case, that's away from food, but it might also be important for reproduction. And then the second part, how do they ever get anything to eat? Okay, so I think that relates to our question we had earlier about hunting rates. So immigrant males are by far, they're the lowest ranking, they're the ones that are hunting most often, so they're a little bit smaller than females, but they're still able to, a lone immigrant male is able to take down a wildebeest that's this big, about the size of a cow. So they're able to do that on their own, and they can just devour it as quickly as they can before anyone else shows up. So, and yeah.
Yeah, question on the sort of the matrilions within the larger clan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever see any reversals in dominance across the matrilines, where a low-ranking matriline sort of moves up beyond a higher one? And sort of related to that, why do low-ranking matrilines remain in the clan, or why are they tolerated in the clan and not kicked out?
Okay, so the first question is, do we see these overthrows where whole matrilines will just usurp other matrilines? There have been a couple of instances in all of hyena biology watchers where this has been recorded, but it's pretty rare. So that does not happen very often. One thing that we are looking at using these social network techniques, our clan has actually gotten to be too big. So the clan is basically got to be about 90 members. It got to be so large, it permanently split into 2 different clans. And what we're seeing is that members of the same matriline are actually splitting into these different groups. And we're asking the question of how rank relationships are now being restructured. So is under this permanent splitting, so not this day-to-day stuff that I was talking about, but permanent social groups being in different areas, maintaining new territories. If they come together again, they're going to meet in a clan war situation. We have mothers on one side and grandmothers on another, and so in that situation, we've had these kin groups split up, and it may have reorganized these rank relationships and provided an opportunity that we don't normally see during times when clans are very, very stable. And the reason, I think you're asking about, that hyena clans are so stable is these groups are occupying very tight territory space. So right next door to each social group is another group of hyenas. And we've had, in an earlier part of the study, one of these clans was actually poisoned. And so we had females from our clan go over and recruit into this new space. So we think that if this space is then it's an ecological constraint on that level, where if territory were to open up, these clans probably might split up, and then it would open up new opportunities. They're plural breeding, so there is skew within these hyena clans, but everyone will reproduce. It's just the rate at which they reproduce and the rate at which offspring survive. It varies based on rank. So, Ning? Yeah.
You're saying that the grading can enhance the social cohesion between, especially two non-relatives?
The what did?
Between non-relatives.
The first part, sorry. The greeting, right,
Sorry.
yes. So the greeting behavior.
Yeah, I'm wondering how constant the partner preference in the behavior of the greeting, and especially when two subgroups fall apart, and then when they join again, and whether the individual will still direct their greeting to a certain individual or anyone.
So if I understand the question is maybe if hyenas have recently met up, whether they would greet again with each other, and how that sequentially...
The relationship's stable when there's fission. So if partners fission apart, right, when they meet up again, do they maintain the relationship?
Yes. So they absolutely do maintain relationships across time. So hyenas have these long-term relationships. They can spend, at least in our work so far, we've shown 11-year relationships where these patterns of association are actually predictive of social tolerance and feeding tolerance. So among non-kin, we see relationships that can build up over time. So it does seem like there are these long-lasting relationships, but their preference is for kin, and these kin relationships that are being maintained primarily through these greetings seem to be the most stable. Is that getting at what you were going for? Yeah. So they definitely have these repeated interactions. Immigrant males, less so, and they have less strong patterns of association as well. So, let's see. Brooke?
I'm going to take the liberty of asking
Yeah.
the
Oh,
last
right.
question.
That was so fun. Okay.
So I think you sort of got at this, but so if with the overthrows being rare, but if let's say the alpha female dies, or like the alpha of whatever particular lineage that is died, does that another member of that lineage then take over and they maintain their rank as being, or kind of will another group sort of move up? Yeah. So in situations where a mom dies, her kids actually will compete with each other for the top spot, or for her spot in the dominance hierarchy. So there's queuing, and there's youngest ascendancy. So the hyenas that are, so if a female dies, she has 2 kids, the youngest one is actually higher ranking than the older one, and the younger one is then able to take over that dominance position. So we had, when Bracket Shoulder died, we actually had 2 females that were of ages that they were not quite adults, so we weren't sure if that rule was going to hold. But we had Murphy took her spot, and she's now our new alpha. So
they basically, when the mom was gone, the next ones in line were then able to maintain their dominant spot. So I actually had another thought too, but I guess we can just, yeah, we'll just wrap up and yeah. Thanks so much.